All right, ladies, gentlemen, boys, girls, in the studio, Big Frank's League of Men Coach's Corner with the Jet Rises. Frank Massaro ascending, rising, ready to go in 2021. My brother, what is going on?
What's up, buddy? How we doing?
Dude,
I am doing great.
We're here. We're talking baseball. We're doing our thing. We're with you, kind of catching up. And this is a part of our Big Frank's League of Men Manager Series where we're just getting to know all the folks. We're going around the league, going around the horn and chatting baseball, talking a little bit about your teams, talking a little bit about your history and a little bit of all that. So excited to dig a little deeper and chat with the man behind the Jet. So let's start with that just off the top. Jet Rises.
Yeah, baby.
Talk about the name. Like, where's that come from? How do you jump into that? How do you land that as the name? Because I know you've grown the name over the last few years.
Yeah. So this, like, the it's kind of like a two-part kind of name, right? When I first started in this league, I believe I went by just Godico, which was our, but for the viewer, listeners, and Godico was just a random ass name I made up for a fake baseball player, Godico Sanchez. It was just like, off the cuff, like I wanted to be a god, but then I realized I can't be called God, so I put a little eco, to make it a little more palatable and friendly. And then Sanchez was just because like I don't know, Gary Sanchez wasn't around at the time, but like I felt like it was more, that's what it was. Pablo Sanchez.
Come on.
Pablo Sanchez.
Best in the game.
The GOAT, dude. The GOAT. little border, like that's like a little 2003 stereotyping, but
yeah,
he was the best in the game.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
So, and then after like the media kind of came to be, and I started like wanting to like get away from Godico, be a little bit more personable, more baseball oriented. So I always like loved Benny the Jet. And so at one point I was called the Jet at work because like, I was the fastest one out of like 50-year-old finance guys, 50, 60-year-old finance guys. It's not hard to be the Jet, but I was the Jet, and, a little bit of resemblance to Benny the Jet. So that's where the Jet part came in. So I even think for 1 year I was the Jet.
I think it was. Yeah, the Jet was that transition year between Godico, the Jet, and then the Jet Rises.
Yeah, and then so now remember, like in the first couple of years of this league, like I also like had my AIG league at work. I had another league that I was a part of on the side, but the Jet Rises was like the official, like I would call it like rebirth. It was basically like the media egging my team on. And so the Rises part was like, I'm going to rise above the media. I'm going to rise above expectations, really. But ever since then, like I think that's like going to be the name going forward because it's just like so applicable and relatable to me. And
total baseball name. You feel like a Sandlot homage, and the fact that it's just this idea that your goal is to rise, right? And you've put in that position. So you talk a little bit about the Jet Rises, Benny the Jet, Sandlot, a love of baseball, right? I've been asking everybody the same question, right? You love baseball. You've been into the stats of baseball. You dive deep into it. You love watching the game. Like, what was the inception of your love for baseball? Like, what got you into the sport? What kind of things keep you into the sport? I'm interested to learn a little bit about, like, what fuels the baseball engine for you.
Yeah. So I think, you're tied pretty closely to the story, Vin. We were on the same Little League T-ball team. Shout out to the Coach Nucci. Shout out Jay Bond. We it's a game that we've played our entire lives. And I think in the beginning it was more of like it was almost like our parents were obligated to bring us. T-ball was everything, right? Yeah. But I think as we started getting older and started to realized that we were good at some aspects of the game, like that's just when I got hooked. I vaguely remember there was a game that we played at John Glenn, and it was just like a small field, and I like caught like the final out. I was actually playing first base. That's how early this was in our baseball.
That's early on. That's not typical Jet Rise's Frank Mazzaro position.
Yeah, and it was like it was a regular game, but I made the last out, right? Caught it, and like I was so pumped to make like the last to record that last punch out, and I was just like, oh my god, like, and I remember that feeling so very well because at that point I was like, I like that feeling. How do I recreate that again and again and again? Yep. So then it just became like, as we got older, I would say you and I were decent players up until I want to say like middle school. Mm-hmm. And like then in middle school, like you started going your track route, but like we basically hit baseball puberty.
That's right.
And then all of a sudden like technique started coming into it. So then I started like loving playing infields at second base, but I wanted more of the action at shortstop.
Yeah.
So playing shortstop like is, I would say, what gave me my deep love of like the statistics.
Yeah. Because
I had to like pay attention to the batters where they're hitting, also being able to predict like if I don't know, who am I going to throw out there? Brian Quitt, who threw pretty hard.
Yeah.
If he was going up against a righty, they're probably going to be ahead of it. So I got to like shift in the hole a little bit more. Yeah. And so like that kind of like you start discovering almost the meta game of baseball once you're like are able to grasp these concepts. And then like once I started working for AIG in finance and like the stat era of baseball started coming around, I just got fully invested. It became, to quote The Sandlot, for Frank Joseph Massaro, baseball wasn't a game, it was a way of life. And so, from at every stage of my life, I've always taken baseball with like just a grain of confidence. And it also just like, I feel like it's such a good way to just connect to people like we have here in this league.
Yeah. No, I think that's right. It's a cool journey, right? Because it starts with just playing the game, loving the game, shortstop, kind of scrappy high school stuff like that. And it carries through to kind of as you get an adult, you go out of that prime and then you start enjoying it in a different way. So I love that piece. And for you, right, as you've moved more into that analytics, let's take reality and move to fantasy, right? Do you think that that's been for you as you've thought about building teams coming into fantasy baseball, right? What's your coach's methodology around building your team, around producing results? Like, is it super stats driven? Are there specific stats you're looking at? Are there certain things that you're paying attention to more than other things? Because it seems like that's been your kind of forte as you've kind of managed through year over year.
Yeah, for sure. I think you hit the nail right on the head. Like, I'm pretty stats driven, but also like I'm a big proponent of like eye test. Like, I got to see this guy play, which is why the MLB TV app might be the MVP for everyone this year. But I like to see guys like, again, when we're seeing fantasy, you see numbers, and like a lot of people can extrapolate what they will from numbers, but like watching these guys play, you can definitely tell when a guy's got a certain edge or a certain something that like the numbers aren't showing. And like, that's like kind of going treasure hunting, right? It's how I picked up Frankie Montas a couple of years ago, how I picked up, oh my God, there was another great pickup. I'm blanking on it. Ignore. But I think like there is just so much that you can learn just by watching the game and seeing those like intangibles from different players. My overall strategy is, yes, get guys that can hit all the categories, but also like I want athletes that can stay healthy.
Yeah. So
naming like, Whit Merrifield, the Jet Rise's captain, I think he encapsulates perfectly exactly what I'm looking for in a ball player.
Yeah.
and that's why he's the captain.
You know,
Five-tool guy.
Five-tool guy, and I think that's, and you're seeing that early in the season. I mean, damn, you know, especially on a scrappy lineup that you've got, and you've now coined scrappy. I think that's a new word that, you know, we've had many words and many phrases in this league. We use manager agility a lot, right? When you look at scrappy, right? Is that something you're looking for in a player or in a team? Do you want them to be more scrappy, or do you want them to be more polished? As you think, if I had to give you the choice of to a scrappier player, that's going to be, you know, eye test, or a polished player on the eye test. What would be for the Jet Rises for Frank as you're thinking about making a pickup? It's a waiver wire. You're between two guys. What are you feeling there? Because I know you've coined that phrase.
Yeah. So that's definitely a tough one, because I would want the more polished player for my fantasy team. But if I was actually like managing a group of guys, like actually as a coach, I'd probably want the more scrappy player. And the reason why I'd want the more scrappy player in that scenario is because, by definition, what I mean when I say scrappy, I mean it's a guy that, like, it's, you know, it's a person that will do whatever they can to complete the objective right in front of them, and they're not necessarily thinking about, you know, how their stats are going to look at the end of the season. They're not thinking about who they're playing tomorrow. It's like, in that moment, in that very second, what is that person going to do to just inch closer? And like, that's what they are focused on. So like, I think like the origin of scrappy, you know, on this league was referencing the Kansas City Royals. I said they were a scrappy team. And the reason why I meant that, and I still think they're incredibly scrappy, is like, they're a team that will grind out games, and they don't worry about what the score is right now. It seems like everyone on that Kansas City Royals team just has the mentality of living in the moment, living in that pitch, that at bat, and they just take it, you know, pitch by pitch, and just grind out. And more times than not, they'll have success, but then they'll have games where they get blown out 13-2.
Yeah. Jesus. I think there's three scrappy teams, and we'll talk about, I think, some of this stuff with the broad groups as we do talking baseball, right? Because I think that's as we get groups of people together talking about this stuff. I do love that we're coining new fun phrases, because I think that they add a lot of fun to the league. So scrappy is a 2021 new term for the league, and as we go from scrappy to what should be polished, we're talking about the Jet Rises draft and his team to start the year. So, you know, one thing we're highlighting as we go into this year, and we'll do continually, right, is you know, kind of looking at the team, and you know, I'll say to everybody, gut reaction, right? You did a draft. Did it go the way you thought it was going to go? Did you land what you wanted to land? Were there surprises? Were there downfalls in the draft? Were there things that you wanted to get someone, but there was a reach? I'm curious to see, as the Jet came out of that nighttime, how did you feel?
I felt really strong about my draft. So going into every draft, I kind of go in with the mentality that I'm not going to win this league on draft night. I'm creating the foundation to win and go far. Just by past experience, like, it's the guys that are constantly active, constantly scouring the waiver wire, constantly trying to it's those guys that will make the playoffs. And if you sleep on a week, you know, for whatever reason, sometimes it's vacation, sometimes it's whatever, you sleep, that could be the difference between you being in the playoffs and out. So it's really just like, almost, I would say, a battle of attrition. And I look forward to going into that every year, for the long haul, the marathon run. But draft night, this was probably the strongest that I felt coming out of a draft, because I knew that, like, I never felt like I reached for anyone. I never felt like I, wanted a guy and then he got taken, like, because of someone reached to take him. I never felt like I was in that mode where I was like getting blindsided. I always felt like I was just playing the ball as it lies, and making like the ideal pickup. my draft strategy usually stays the same. I think I was drafting ninth this year.
Yep.
So with that, I just needed to draft a big hitter right off the get-go and then get a big pitcher. Just because the positioning-wise, I was like, that's probably where I was like a little iffy, and like probably the most tense in my draft was literally that ninth pick and then the comeback.
Yeah. Yeah, that's an interesting position. Again, at the end of there, it's good. And I went back and forth on, because I was in the second spot. So when you get that right after the spin, right, it's good because you get almost like forecast what your 2 picks are going to be. You can kind of watch and kind of say, okay, I got 2 guys in a row, basically. I'm going to start to canvas that. So definitely agree with you. But it's definitely anxiety when that snake is coming around and you got to wait. And, you see all those guys coming off the board for sure. But yeah, your team, if you got to say, on paper right now, are you more excited about your offense or are you more excited about your pitching staff?
Right now I would say I'm to be more excited. I want to say I'm excited for my pitching staff. Reason being just because I basically have all of my big cards on the pitching staff on the IL. I mean, Bauer's great. And Barrios is great, and I know what I'm going to get with them. I know that I'm going to get guys that have really good stuff that can go deep into ball games. And with quality starts being like a major factor, I know that those guys are going to get those aplenty.
Yeah.
What else? Like Danielson Lamet, Zach Gallen, Carlos Carrasco.
Yeah.
I don't want to call them a Hydra, but like that's what I feel like I have waiting in the wings.
Yeah.
Whereas my offense, I feel like my offense is, I got a couple studs, got a couple duds, but that's exactly what I want. I want I want guys to overperform. I'm gonna have guys that are gonna underperform, and I'm gonna have guys that just stay par for the course.
Yeah.
I just need to be competitive in those 6 categories.
Yeah. And I know we were talking and we joked around. I look at your draft. I see 15th pick, middle of the draft, Aaron Hicks. And you've been throwing shade on Aaron Hicks. So like, what's the deal? Like instant drop. We say in the draft every year, he's the league slut. He's going to be a lot of places. Like, I know you probably have some hot takes on Aaron Hicks and probably feel a little frustrated. So just love to hear kind of where you are, because that's a mid pick. That's an early pick to have someone fall off the board early. So just kind of wanted to bring that to the surface.
Yeah, for sure. No, so the Hicks pick to me, like it came down to the fact of like I knew what I'm gonna get with. I really know what I'm gonna get with Hicks. And when it came down to it, like I more or less wanted to buy the ticket to see what Verdugo and Senzel could do over what I know Hicks can do. Yeah. And the reason why I say like I wanted to take that ticket was because, again, I have 3 players on the IL, and with the innings raised this year, the minimum innings limit, I knew that I was going to run into, or I could have potentially run into an issue where having 3 major pitchers on the IL, that could potentially be an issue. So Hicks, unfortunately, was the casualty in that scenario.
Yeah.
But now, hot take time, Yankee fan hot take time. I don't like Hicks in the 3 hole. I think that is a stupid move. Yeah. Hicks is a guy that needs, he goes deep in counts, right? And he goes deep in counts because he will try and walk. He'll try and slap a single. That's not kind of where the game is at in terms of like what you expect out of your 3 hitter.
Yeah.
Your 3 hitter should be driving in runs.
Yeah.
Right. Like take our back in the day baseball thing. I batted 2 because I could get on base. You were batting 3 because you could drive me in. Right. That's how it was. Like the number 3 guy has to drive in those guys. And when you have guys like DJ LeMahieu and Aaron Judge that have good OBP,
they're going to be on base. Down. Yeah, that's right.
I get what Boone's doing in terms of like making that first inning at minimum very hard for a pitcher.
Yeah, because you get a switch hitter. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, but like you could just tell Hicks is not comfortable there.
Yeah.
He's not comfortable. So I was like, as long as he's in the 3-hole for this juncture, I was like,
Put
he's the casualty.
Put El Gary in the 3-hole, baby. Bring him out of 6 and put him in 3. I need it. I love that. And then, last question on just the team specifically is because I agree with you. I think draft wise, pitching wise, you got to be stoked that you're going to have people waiting in the wings, and these are good pitchers that get innings eaten up, and you could have most likely some opportunities to build into that offense with some pieces. So you got to feel really good. You look at your draft. Is there someone on that list? Not in the top. Let's get out of the top 7 or 8, right? Who are you most excited about? Like, who you jazzed about? Who you think is going to be like the guy that's really going to help you or take you to the next level?
Yeah. I would say, like, he's not off to a good start right now, but Keston Hiura. Hiura. There we go.
Hiura.
He's an interesting kind of player because watching him play in the COVID shortened season, he was putting up some decent numbers. Putting up 13 home runs in that shortened season for second baseman. That's like some power production. That's, I don't want to say unheard of at the position, but like for that short season, hell yeah, definitely like pretty solid. But then in 2019, he hit 19 homers. So I'm interested because like I got him, I think it was, I want to say the 16th.
Yeah, no, it was mid. It was definitely lower. Let me look it up right now. 13.
Oh, okay, 13.
Yeah.
So yeah, definitely. Like I like that pick way more than my ass Hicks pick.
But I mean, that's the ADP you're paying pretty much the right space for that at 153. So that's about right.
Yeah. So that to me right there, that was like, he was an exciting pick. I'm trying to think because I really liked there was like right around there. I think it was Hira and then
Santana.
I started picking up. Yeah, I did the Carlos Santana, which I think he could rake this year. I think
he's on a scrappy team.
Scrappy team. And you know what? Like I start looking at that Royals lineup.
Mm-hmm. Could be good.
And that is a difficult lineup to get through.
And Mondesi's not playing, right? Mondesi's out early. Benintendi, who could come back and be a player. You've got Witt. You got Carlos Santana, right? Those 4 alone as a top 4. That's a pretty decent top 4 squad anywhere.
And then you got Soler.
That's right.
Coming to bring him in. Like
That's
these
right.
guys are
5 or 6, yeah.
And again, scrappy. These motherfuckers are scrappy.
Damn it, boy.
Yeah. Like, so I liked that like Santana, and then I think I went into like Gallen, Carrasco, that flow. I really like that like section of the draft, and I think that I'm going to be focused on that. Like, once I hoist the title up, I'm going to look back at those like 4 or 5 picks.
13 to 17, you think? So Hirta, Santana, get rid of Hicks, Montero, Verdugo, right? You feel good about that 13 to 17?
Actually, it might even be wherever Carrasco.
10. So you're saying about 10 to 14 is your sweet spot.
Okay.
Carrasco.
Yeah.
We're leaving out Josh Bell, who I think was, if I had to look at your draft and say the person I'm most excited about and scared for, I think it's Josh Bell, even though he hasn't had a hit in the season, right? Carrasco, Bell, Lamet, Hayuta, Santana, like that, 10 to 14. That's the money rounds.
That's my money. That's my money ball right there.
Yeah, that's solid. So 100% love it. Definitely think Jet Rises has got a team to be worried about. Now, as you look at the league, right? You've been around for a while, right? You look at managers, you look at kind of how we play. Outlook for 21. Any headlines, storylines as a manager that's been around, that's kind of looked at the seasons, kind of looked at the managers, seen the drafts, assessed everything, I'm sure has been looking around the league, has looked at the teams. Headlines for the year, surprises, things that you think might be things we'll be talking about in middle of the season, end of the season, anything like that. Just curious to see if you've got any kind of gut reactions.
Yeah, for sure. I think a lot of people like, Lauren Bergstein, 22 pitch Georgasm. Um, great name, by the way.
I love it.
But Lorne is a guy that like is super knowledgeable about all sports in general. Background, he was my coworker. Hit it off with him right away. Became a really good friend. But he's a guy that like currently I'm going up against right now, and you know, I was talking about my offense being so great and coming out of the draft. Lauren's offense is hanging right there with me.
Nasty week one. Nasty week one.
Yeah.
Oof.
Crazy.
Yeah.
So like I think our matchup is kind of going to be like a microcosm of like that's how Lauren's going to play everyone. Like I said, he's super in touch with sports, super in touch with baseball, and so he's a manager that I think like because he, you know, it's his second year in the league. I think he raised eyebrows by making the playoffs, going to the what was it, semifinals?
Yeah, semis last year.
Yeah, semis last year. I think in a longer season, like he'll demonstrate what he can do. Other headlines, I think Max Widmer is due for another postseason berth. He might not be showing it right now in the standing, but I think Max is ready to, like, you know, he got a taste of prior to the COVID season. He got a taste of what it's like to make the playoffs, and also a taste of like utter defeat. He literally missed, and I'll go back. He lost by one at bat, one pitch.
One at bat, one pitch. It was crazy. It's crazy.
Yeah, and which, by the way, that's that year our side of the bracket, the me, you, Max, was the better side.
That was yeah. Let's lest we digress into what the best side of brackets are. Typically, it has a member of this call is usually on the better side of the bracket in the playoffs. Let's be honest.
Yeah. Other headlines.
So we got Lorne continues to impress. New York Post. We've got Knight finally finds Dawn, and he finds his way to the playoffs. What else?
And you know what? I'm going to give it to Right Stuff. I think Right Stuff is, you know, he's kind of, I don't want to say resting on his laurels a little bit, but he's got 2 rings. But I'll say he got 2 rings when the league was a lot smaller, when we were about 8. He got 1 when we were 8, 1 when we were 10. Also, like when we were 10, there were some managers that like kind of copped out like end of the season. Not trying to take away credit from Right Stuff, because again, I think Dan is a great baseball mind.
Yeah.
He's someone that is very in tune with it. But when it comes down to it, I think Dan this year is gonna, like, in recent years his performance has been poor. You know, hasn't even smelled the postseason. The media is constantly ranking his team in the bottom. But I think this year is when Dan's like kind of got, you know, a year off, chip on his shoulder. I think he's ready to go full send. So I would say this headline would coming from the Daily News. Right Stuff comes back seeking a groove.
Ooh, okay.
And in that same vein, I'm going to throw the Revenant in there. The Revenant's hype on his squad, hype on his pitching.
Jose Altuve, the captain.
Hype on Jose Altuve.
Yeah.
Very hype.
Yeah.
I think these 2 guys, Nick and Dan, good managers. I think they feel like they have something to prove this year. So I could see some headlines around playoff time, like, you know, a year off does the body good, and they're in the playoffs.
Right.
I could see that.
Yeah.
Do I think it's going to happen? I'm going to damn well do everything in my power to make sure that it's not an easy road for them.
Depends on if they face the Jet Rises in the first round of the playoffs. That's if you don't get a bye. You know, that's the real kicker, right? You get the bye, and I think in this league, the bye is crucially important in a big playoff season. You get that extra week. You get to move forward a little bit. So definitely something that you got to be thinking about as you're managing this league. But, you know, excited for 20 plus weeks of baseball, right? We're back. We're in it. You know, I think teams are set. Teams are ready. So, you know, for Jet Rises, stoked to get you on, talk a little bit about baseball, talk about your background. I think this is definitely for some folks going to give them some of the insights onto how you put the teams together, but that doesn't help them beat you. They've got to go out and they got to serve up. So looking forward, I think we've got a matchup. Is it next week that we get week 2? Let me take a look at this real quick.
Either week 2 or 3.
I think it was early in the season, so let's take a peek here real quick. Yeah, it looks like next week I'm kicking your ass because it's going to be next week. So for anybody watching, this is a preview. It's all friendly games now, but soon enough it will be battle and war. So for the Coach's Corner, Big Frank's League of Men, Jet Rises, Frank Mazzaro, thanks for joining us, man. Always a pleasure to have you on. Yeah. We'll keep talking baseball with you all season. We'll get the rest of the managers on, but we will we'll see if these headlines come to fruition. We'll see if the Jet puts the ring on his finger, and if this is going to be the year he makes it all happen. Ladies and gentlemen, Big Frank's League of Men, signing off. We'll see you soon.
Hell yeah.